Good morning, Magee. Why, I had Congressman Harper visiting with us in Magee. I just could not resist asking him some questions on spending, because this is something that touches every one of our homes, every one of us every day, and you're with big dogs in the spending. So tell us a little bit about spending.
It is, it's crazy.
Obviously.
I mean, look, you know, everybody's had to live on borrowed money for
Sure.
every once in a while, and you can do it for a season, but you know you can't do it for long, because you know what the end result is. At some point, you have to live within your means. You cannot spend more than you make.
Right.
And that's what the country is doing. And you know, our state government in Mississippi has to live within its budget.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it difficult
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, but it's just so hard to do anything. And I'll give you a perfect example. You find out that every program up there is somebody's program.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
I had a gentleman come up to me about seven or 8 months ago, and he shook my hand and said, "You got to do something about this spending that's out of control up there." He said, "You know," and I hadn't gotten my Social Security cost of living increase in 3 years. And so, bless his heart, I said, "Yes, sir, that's a problem." But you know, it's on the one hand, people like their programs,
Right.
but they don't want to. You know, they don't like the spending level that's there. But I'm going to give you a perfect example of why it's so hard. I had a bill that I filed last year this bill would eliminate a program. You know, on your income tax where you have the box that you check, send $3, the federal election campaign fund.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, this bill would eliminate that. Nobody's using it. Obama opted out of it in 2008, and no presidential candidate is using it in the 2012 elections at all.
Had no idea.
At all. And so the bill was, let's eliminate a program that nobody's using. The other part of the bill was to eliminate an agency called the Election Assistance Commission. The EAC came about after HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, you know, after the Bush Gore recount back in Florida in 2000. Mm-hmm. The EAC is supposed to last for 3 years. 9 years later, it's going strong. And it's been sued for political discrimination. It has no commissioners in place right now, no executive director that's there. They've doubled their employee size in the last 3 years with no new responsibilities. The National Association of Secretaries of State, which is a bipartisan group, did a resolution in 2005 at their convention, renewed it in 2010, saying it needed to be eliminated. So this is the closest example to what Reagan said, that the closest thing on earth to eternal life is a temporary government program. And so here we have a program. So this bill eliminated a program that's not being used, eliminated an agency that needs to be eliminated. It passed the House. Not a single Democrat in the House would vote for it, and it's dead in the Senate. Harry Reid will not bring it up for a vote in the Democratic controlled Senate. So I share that with you to tell you, if you can't eliminate something like that, which eliminating these two would save $500 million over 5 years. And if you can't eliminate that, how do you do anything? And so everybody's got their program. And so if you know, somebody might come up to me in DC and say, you know, you've got to do something about this spending. But my program now,
yes,
it's
sir.
a good program. In fact, you don't want to cut it, you might want to give it more money.
Yeah.
When we look at the spending issues and the fact that we're now in our beginning our fourth year of about $1.3 trillion a year of deficit spending, it's insane. And we can go back before I was there with TARP, which cost money. And of course we fought hard against the stimulus bill, but they control the House, Senate. Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker. Well, the stimulus bill added over $1 trillion of debt to our country. It wasn't really for highways and bridges, and like we were told, it went to all kinds of other programs, discretionary spending. In fact, this administration sent out a notice just a month ago advising everybody that had unspent stimulus money, go ahead and spend it. Okay? So, has it helped? No, it hasn't helped. And remember what the President said, if we don't pass that stimulus bill back in early 2009, unemployment's going to go to 8%. Well, we went over $1 trillion in debt, and we hadn't been below 8% since.
That's right.
And the new number's out, 9.1%. This is an example of a president that's out of his comfort zone, and extremely important that we elect a Republican president.
I agree with that completely. It's very frightening. It's very frightening. Example after example of moves that you're making to, you know, that the House of Representatives is making to make changes, and we can't go.
Well, look, it's been a very frustrating year. You know, you really realize that there are things that that we could do, and and you can't get them done, and that you can't get them done if the Senate. You can't make the Senate do these things. And there are many people back when we went through the spending last year, got to a continuing resolution to keep the government funded. A lot of people said, shut it down. Well, it's not as simple as that. If we had shut it down, you know how many checks the federal government issues every month? Every month?
I would hate to know.
I still stunned. 80 million. The federal government issues 80 million checks a month. Now that includes Social Security recipients, military.
Yeah, but still.
But it's
still 80 million.
It's a lot of checks. So how do you prioritize that? And one of the things for us on that last continuing resolution that some people said, no, you ought to shut it down, and I didn't. I thought we should keep it going. Is we had 2 pro-life gains in there. That one that added the Dornan language back to the District of Columbia, another that eliminated some planning money that went international. You know, probably $150 million worth that was eliminated, which was a good thing to eliminate. And one of the key things was we were getting calls from spouses of active duty military who were in theater who had been notified that their checks were going to be cut. And how can you do that? How can we not make sure that our men and women in the field are taken care of, and their families back home are taken care of?
Not easy decisions.
Yeah, it's tough.
Not easy
but
decisions.
Look, this is not that hard. You look back, go back to when George Bush was president, when we had a Republican speaker before Nancy Pelosi. Do you know what the deficit spending for the year was before Nancy became speaker? It was $168 billion for the entire year. And then 2 years later, Bush's last year, Pelosi's been speaker for 2 years, is $484 billion. They come in with a Democratic president, Obama, Harry Reid in the Senate, Nancy Pelosi in the House, 1.3, almost 1.5 trillion in that first year. And they've continued on that. We've got over 70 federal welfare programs. We now, with this administration, we've had 3 years of unemployment over 8%, and there's no end in sight with his policies. You know, there are some that believe that the government's the solution for every problem, but in this deal, the government's the problem for a lot of things that are out there, and we can do a whole lot better than this.
I think you said it, and I think that's the best we can do, a lot more. I hope you'll vote Republican like I'm going to, and have a good day.